my name is Carol May Whittick, your creativity and spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. And let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. Before going into this week's episode with April Davila, I'd like to share with you a couple of ways that I can support you. First, I'm inviting you to the first ever Creative Confidence Masterclass. This is going to be a monthly masterclass and it launches on this Wednesday, the 10th of July at 7 p.m. UK time. The link to join is in the show notes. This Creative Confidence Masterclass is especially for you if you want to rediscover your creative abilities, explore spiritual practices to enhance your creativity, build a strong connection with your intuition, and be able to integrate your creativity into all aspects of your life. Once again, the links are in the show notes below. Look forward to seeing you there. My guest this week is April Davila, an award-winning author, speaker and writing coach who has taught at conferences and workshops online and in person. She is the creator of the Sit Right Here writing coaching program, which integrates mindfulness meditation techniques to help writers quiet their inner critics, overcome writer's block and edit more effectively. And also her mindful writing community meets 6 times a week to help writers get words on the page. During our conversation, April shares how being a practising Buddhist influences her creativity and how she integrates mindfulness into the way she guides her clients. She also talks about how she's using artificial intelligence to assist her work while maintaining her authentic creativity. So as always, I begin by asking my guest, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
For me, that comes with meditation. I always end my meditation, no matter how long I sit for, I take the last 5 minutes to just be in gratitude. And that is absolutely when I feel at my highest resonance.
Perfect. Thank you, April. And before we go further in, can I just give you a moment to just tell a little bit more about yourself? What brought you to the space and the work that you're doing today?
Of course. Okay, so my name is April Davila, and I am a fiction writer and a writing coach. But the thing that makes me a little different from other writing coaches is that I integrate mindfulness practice into how I work with my writers. And it's funny because people don't come to me for that. That's not, no one says like, I'm having trouble writing a novel, I should meditate more. Like that's not a train of thought that happens. But when people come to me for help with their novel, what I find is that very often the things that are getting in the way are not their sentence structure or their 3-act structure. It's the emotional part of writing. And so dealing with the mindset has been such a powerful game changer for me. And the way that I got to this was very much by accident. I started writing professionally in 2009. I was working in marketing, and getting up early to write my novel before I went to work and not having any luck with my fiction at all. I couldn't figure out the novel. I was going around and around in circles on the short stories or just like being rejected one after another. And it was frustrating. And right around 2016, things started to shift. I figured out the novel, found an agent, sold the book. I had some short stories published. One of them was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. My blog won an award for best websites for writers. Like everything started to shift for me. And when I looked back at what did I start doing differently in 2016, I had started meditating regularly, not a lot. I did 10 minutes a day. I had a regular routine already of writing in my journal while I drank my coffee before I started writing. And so what I had done was just kind of slip in 10 minutes of meditation because, we all know it's good for us. And I was like, I'm just going to try it. And it really was such a game changer for me. And I didn't even realize it until years later when I looked back, and at first when I did, and I was like, well, that can't be the thing that changed it, because correlation is not necessarily causation. It was a coincidence. But when I really started to dig in and look at the ways that mindfulness practice had changed my writing practice, I started to kind of formulate these. There were 6 main ways that it happened. And actually, I'm putting the finishing touches on a book right now called Scribbling Buddha, 6 Ways Mindfulness Can Help You Write More and Suffer Less. And it's these 6 things that I figured out. And it was surprising to me that this was true. But when I realized it was true, I decided to double down on that. I went and got a 2-year teacher certification in mindfulness so that I could really know what I was doing in integrating mindfulness practice into my coaching with the writers that I worked with. And it's been a fantastic journey. It's so much more satisfying to really help writers not just figure out their story structure, but get out of their own way, actually figure out why they're not sitting down to write when they have time. I mean, the worst thing that can happen to a writer who's struggling is to quit their day job. And then all of a sudden it's not the day job's fault that they're not writing. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it's my fault. And then I've seen it happen. Writers go into this downward spiral of what's wrong with me. Why can't I write? But I'm not sitting down. And that's some of the hardest stuff that writers deal with. And I really, I feel it's such an honor to get to be there with those writers and work through it all with them.
Yeah, I love that. What was it that took you into coaching other people? Because obviously you were doing your own work. So how did that start? What was the beginning of that?
Friends asking for help. It started very informally. Officially, my coaching business started 2 years ago, but for years I've been just kind of helping friends. And then I guess in 2018, I started to be a little more formal about it. I started asking for people to compensate me for the work I was doing, but still not. I wasn't pushing too hard on it. It was just kind of a thing I did so between writing fiction, doing a little bit of coaching, and then I was also freelance work was really kind of the majority of my income at that point. But then what was it? Yeah, about 2 years ago, this is why I finally decided to pivot very intentionally into coaching, was that ChatGPT came on the scene, and copywriting, the world of copywriting is very tumultuous right now, to choose a word. It's a tricky time. And I was like, I don't know that I want to fight against ChatGPT. And I love working with fiction writers. I love talking about fiction. So I just decided to cut freelance work entirely and focus completely on working with writers.
It's interesting. What are your thoughts on where, I know we're kind of going into space that we didn't say we were going to, but I'm curious because we kind of moved away from one thing because of the advent of AI and what that's doing now. So my question is, what are your thoughts as where will it level off? Because things start and everyone's trying to scramble around and work out and reposition themselves, and then also that it's a new day for people who have never been able to write, that you can suddenly just plug in a couple of sentences, if that, and then you get a load spit out on the other side. And it feels really exciting because now you've got in seconds what you probably were never able to do over months and weeks of staring at a blank page or a flashing cursor, So,
Exactly.
so I can see how it's enticing. But then also when one thing comes in, when technology comes in, it will always there's always going to be some movement with the people that were doing the work that the technology was doing there before.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on what you feel could happen? I know we don't already know. There's 2 sides to the AI story.
Oh my gosh. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by the whole topic. Well, and writers have strong opinions on these. A lot of writers I talk to have I'll never touch it. I'll never touch it. And I can't help but think at some point you're going to touch it. It's not going anywhere. Right. So my take on technology is like lean in, because if you just ignore it, you're gonna. So I get to a little bit of history on me. My mom is an artist, and my growing up, like for most of my childhood, she was a graphic artist, and that's not a job description that exists anymore. At least not. I mean, there are computer graphic artists, but it used to be like if you wanted a sign for your store window that says like the store hours, you had to go pay someone to make that sign. And that was my mom. And now you just print it, right? You just type it in the computer, print it out, put it up. And so my mom resisted computers. I mean, she didn't know, nobody knew. And she lost business until things got kind of desperate. And she had to go back to school and learn computers. And the whole thing was just, I remember her struggling with like, I don't want to do this. And so when ChatGPT came on the scene, I thought of that. I thought of her and where she was decades before, and decided I was going to learn from what she went through, and I wasn't going to ignore it. So I started playing with it as soon as it was available. And it is brilliant, just like you said, where you like, and I wouldn't use it for my fiction ever, because my fiction is an expression of me. And that's why fiction is still and will always be, I deeply believe this, human stories are important. Fiction matters. It is human imagination. I mean, the very idea of computers and so much of science comes out of science fiction, is that someone imagined this and then someone else was like, hey, I'm going to make that real. Which I love the interplay between fiction and science and all of it. But I forget where I was going with this, that it is super useful, that there's a lot of writing I don't really need to do. Like if I write a blog post, I don't really need to rewrite it so that it fits into an Instagram caption. I just put the blog post into ChatGPT and say, can you make this an Instagram caption with hashtags, go. And in 3 seconds it's done. And I'm not wasting my writing time rewriting a blog post for Instagram, which is like, I know some people, this is where it gets very fuzzy, right? Writing Instagram posts is almost like poetry to them. That is their creative expression, and they would never want to use ChatGPT. For me, I would rather spend my time working on my novel and lean into the tool of ChatGPT to create an Instagram post to share an idea that's on my blog. So I think everyone kind of has to find the place where they're comfortable with it. But yeah, ChatGPT is so useful. Contracts, I don't want to write contracts. If I'm like, when I was setting up my new coaching package, I was like, okay, ChatGPT, here's what I'm offering. Here are the parameters. Write me a contract. Boom, done. I would have spent all day on that, probably more than one day. I don't need to do that. And then so I'm all for it, but I'm also like everyone else, a little curious, a little nervous, like, where is it all going? I don't know. But I'm up for it. It's not going anywhere.
No. And it's interesting you talking about technology. Like when Chat GPT first came out, I'm like, I don't know, because my background is like writing, but songwriting. So I spent years honing writing and getting to the point where I was writing lyrics that I felt were of a good level, and not just all the things that you can do with rhymes and how you can play around with it. And it was my initial, and this will sound funny now, considering the world that we're in, I was so against having a thesaurus. I was like, no. Yeah. Can you imagine? I'm not going to have a thesaurus. It's cheating. If I don't know the words, then, that's where my brain was when I was like younger. And, eventually I kind of got past that. But if I wanted to, but it was good training that I resisted it initially, because one, it forced me to see if I knew other words. But then also I used to do this thing when I wanted something to rhyme with something else and I didn't know the words, I'd literally write on one page, I'd write the alphabet down, the margin, I'd literally write A, B, C, D and try and find a word that rhymed with the word that I was trying to match with, so it, like my initial resistance to it, was good. But then I got one, paper one before, like the internet brand that was really well laid out, so I could have like 1 syllable words, 2 syllable, 3 syllable, and it just broke it down in ways that my brain would not have gone there. I hadn't read enough books in order to have that much vocabulary. So my initial resistance to technology was me not wanting to use a thesaurus. That was my technology. That to me was like the shortcut, but the resistance kind of helped me. And initially as well, when Chat GPT came out, I'm like, well, if I'm not sitting here and watching, the flash of the literally like trying to drag it out of my eyeballs, the words that I need, then if I just plug it in and spit it out, because of course I was seeing all over social media, all over the internet is like, get Chat GPT to write you a book and get an AI voice to do it and stick it, and suddenly you can make all this money by just utilizing AI. And so the writer in me was going, well, how's that connecting to your soul? If you're just, so I've still got, I'm still wavering on it in terms of if you're just using it to write everything for you, then where are you in that? And I suppose that's where we're going to line it with, the spirituality part of things as well. But when it comes to like quick research and kind of breaking things down, it's like having a VA that I don't need to pay.
I know, right? For things like an outline, like I think I want to teach a class on X. Can you create an outline for me? And then you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that one. And like, no, that thing's not good. I'm not going to use that. But just to, like a VA to bounce ideas off of, do a first draft, do the outline. I think that's, for me, that's definitely where I've landed. So yeah.
And also after a while, like, I don't know, maybe it's just kind of thinks that it knows certain language that I like. It kind of gets repetitive, it's like, it kind of keeps going around. So maybe like I need to up my prompt skills a little bit, my prompt writing, because when it first came out, like I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I found a course online and I did like a course on prompt writing and what was all possible so that I wasn't just dismissing it out of hand. But I don't know if you know the Australian singer Nick Cave, and he wrote a piece about ChatGPT because so many of his fans were going to ChatGPT and say write a song lyrics in the style of Nick Cave, and he's got a very distinctive style and it kind of spats something out, and he wrote a blog that was like completely refuting the idea of using AI because it wasn't connected to anything and it's got no human experience. And his, I'll find it, I'll send a link to you as well. It's a really interesting piece actually, because he was just like, no way. But like you say, it's only going to get better. Like even seeing AI that generates voices, and I used to do a little bit of book narration, so, and now I've heard some of the voices and it breathes, it intonates in the tiny areas that it never used to. So it's very difficult. So all of those people who rely on being book narrators, I don't know what's going to happen there. I only did it, like I did like 3 or 4 books. So it wasn't like a career. It was like a nice thing to do for a few months. But if that's been your sole career, then I don't know how that's going to disrupt that industry as well. I've seen.
I hadn't thought of that. That's huge.
It's like some of the voices are really, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. And I, as a singer, I listen to voices on a completely different level. So I'm always hearing more than what's just coming out. I'm trying to hear what's happening on a physical basis as well. So and so when I'm listening to them, like, actually, you know what? Some of them, you really wouldn't.
They're that good.
Yeah, you wouldn't really. And even like comparing it to when I listen to singers these days, and even like the best singers will have like, some sort of like digital tuning done on their voices. And you can usually tell, I can usually tell, whereas like years back, there were things that would never be put out, even from singers like, Whitney Houston, the like major greats. If you listen to their early stuff from the 80s, 90s and before, the nuances of the mistakes that they just wouldn't pass muster, they'd be put through a process right now. There's like tiny little voices that, just tiny little off keys. They're not off key, but like they're
part of their style almost.
That wouldn't come out on modern tuning now. Like modern records are so perfect that it's just the human voice doesn't work that way. But these new A ones work within the human voice. It's I don't know how they do it. Technology is like
fascinating.
Completely. But like you, I'm like, I can't pretend it's not happening.
Yeah.
But what I do want to maintain with myself, and then also in a similar way, because I do the creativity and spiritual life coaching, is to then encourage people to stay connected to that bigger part of themselves and go, actually, I can do better, instead of just going, oh, I've got, 1,000 words. Great. How do you help bring your mindfulness and all of your kind of spiritual practices into writing when you're guiding your clients and helping them that way?
So, like I said, there are a number of different ways, but I think the way that most directly answers your question is, so my training is in my background is in Buddhism, and there's this Buddhist concept of right view, the idea of like trying to see things as they really are. And when I am editing something, so like I said, I don't use ChatGPT for my fiction, but let's say someone did. Like, let's say they wanted to do the first draft on fiction because they were just really intimidated, and they're like, okay, ChatGPT, write me a short story about a young girl who, I don't know, whatever the story is that they want it to be. I think the way taking a first draft, whether you've written it or you've had ChatGPT write it, which again, it just feels like that feels icky, but I'm going to run with it here. I think that the way that you would bring your own heart and soul and energy to it is the same either way. And that is trying to get exactly what is in your head and in your heart onto the page. And that's where this idea of right view comes in, is that if I read something, I'm reading my own work, and and what I read on the page doesn't really represent what's in my mind and in my heart, it's not done. And that can manifest in a lot of different ways, where, like, a really practical example, I was working on my second novel, and I had this idea of how I was going to open it. I wanted my main character to be born in a storm, and I had this image of, like, thunder and lightning and trees like thrashing around in the wind and big fat raindrops bursting in the mud, and it was like this really big dramatic scene in my head. So I wrote it, continued on, wrote the whole thing, put it away for a little bit, because that's my process. I like to write straight through, print it out, step away for a little, give my brain a chance to think about something else, so I can come back and read it with a fresh eye and really see what's on the page and not just what I imagine is on the page. So when I came back and I opened it up and I started reading it again, what I had written, that whole scene, I wrote, it was raining. And I'm like, had to laugh at myself, because that is like not at all what was in my head. In my head, it was all those things I described, but what I wrote was, it was raining. And I think if you can't slow down, and this is where the mindfulness practice comes in, and recognize that what's on the page is not what's in your head or in your heart or whatever it is you're really trying to say, then I would have just skipped right over that and been like, yeah, it was raining. It was a big storm. I know what it looks like. But because I was able to slow down and see that wasn't what I was trying to say, then I have the opportunity to open it up and be like, okay, but what was it really? And then I wrote in the thunder and the lightning in the trees and the big fat raindrops, and it was so much better. And it was not something ChatGPT could have done. I mean, it could write a storm, sure, but it couldn't write the storm that was in my head. And when the characters fall in love, ChatGPT could write a love scene, sure, but it's never going to write the way it feels in my heart, and it's not going to look the way it looks in my imagination. And I think that's one of the main reasons that we read fiction. It's one of the reasons we listen to music. It's like, name any art. It's like this window into some other human's imagination, the way they feel. Like, sometimes I'll listen to music and be like, that's what it sounds like in your head. Like, wow, what would it be like to live in that head? Where, like, that's the music that comes out of that head. I would, like, in my brain, I would have never imagined that kind of music. And when I read stories that I never could have imagined, I feel like I'm getting this little window into that author and the way that only they could imagine something. And so that is the part where I feel like human stories are and always will be special and important, and a way to connect as humans to each other. Yeah. So did I answer your question? I got a little lost there.
I don't know, but I got like so much from what, don't worry about that. I got so much from what you were saying, because it just reminded me of so many things, like so many reasons why I can listen to a piece of music and then, I'm, wiping my eyes, because there's something about
Yeah.
it that will just that will stir something up in me. And it's whether, is it that they are, the composer or the players are somehow magically, they know how to kind of play on the strings of a soul or my soul, or they know how to convey their way of seeing things and thinking about things. And there are some words that you can, there are words that are written, like even the short quotes that go around. You think of the magic of, the 10-word quote or even less, where you'll see something and you'll just read a handful of words, and then suddenly it'll be like, oh my gosh, like they're speaking to me. Like there's something about that. Whereas you can say the same thing in very simple, plain language that will convey it, but it might not necessarily spur anyone to action. So I wonder what it is that makes that happen, that brings that forward. That, I don't know. I'm trying to think about my own process to try and talk about how I did it. I think because if I talk about it lyrically, I was always looking for certain words, and then it wasn't even just about finding the word that fit. It was finding a word that then, like when you go into thesaurus, there's so many different ways of saying one word, in English.
Right.
But then even if you have a bunch of synonyms underneath a different definition or different context, it still will be like that word will be better than that word for some reason, even if they're both saying the same, because there's something about it that just kind of brings a different energy in. And it's like, that's one of the reasons that I love words. And I used to try and meld the two with the word, and then also with the chords, which is something that I thought was amazing to do, because you can play a very basic open major or minor chord, but it's then when you start adding in all of those additional notes that then, that's why jazz has that kind of discordant release that, it goes in and out, and you can really feel and be taken away by those things. And it was being able to combine all of those things together that I thought was the magic, that I wonder if, we'll see where technology can go with all. But in talking about that, where you're looking at something and going, like, in your mind, you saw the storm, you felt the rain and the winds and everything, but you just wrote it was raining. How can you encourage somebody who just wants to put it was raining and assumes that if someone else reads it, that would take them enough? How do you encourage them to go like further and not just be satisfied with a simple sentence, where sometimes creating, a few sentences or a paragraph will actually bring out more of them, and especially if they feel that they don't have the words or they don't know where to go with it. So how would you guide them to that?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because whenever I teach writing descriptions, like at a conference or something, there's always like the guy in the back who raises his hand. He's like, yeah, but I don't want my story to be overwritten. I'd rather it be like a good, easy read. And I'm like, yeah, nobody wants to read something that's wildly overwritten. I think we've all had the experience of reading something and being like, like stop describing every detail. And that is one of the challenges of being a writer, of which details are worth slowing down for. Which details matter to the story. So in the example of it was raining, I really wanted the opening of the story to have this dramatic feel to it. It was important to me, and that's why I had envisioned it the way I had envisioned it. And so when I went back and read It Was Raining, I knew that wasn't how I wanted the story to open. That said, you can't, there's so many details in, well, I want to say a person's life, but a character's life. So like another example I like to talk about is, say you have two women in a kitchen and they're having an argument. When I say the kitchen, you and I picture different kitchens, guaranteed, right? And whoever's listening, you're picturing a different kitchen. And a lot of times people will say, like, well, it doesn't really matter, whatever, it's the kitchen. And it's like, yeah, okay, it's just the kitchen. But think about all the opportunity there is in that scene to tell us about those characters, to show us about those characters without saying like, okay, she was a white middle-aged woman, upper middle class who liked to do yoga, or like you can list out things like that, and sure, the information is conveyed, but you have so much more opportunity in writing the description. So instead of saying, okay, maybe it's like a wealthy character, right? So you have her polishing her, or no, the cleaning lady is at the end of the counter doing the final polish on the perfect marble counters or whatever. These like little words you can drop in to describe the kitchen that suddenly make it a fancy kitchen, like a really lovely, expensive house kind of kitchen, versus like the mother who is wiping hair out of her face while she scrubs a baby bottle, and like the toddler is screaming, and like just a few little details in the description, suddenly those are two very different women, right? There's the woman who doesn't have any help, who has little kids, who's struggling, and we don't even know like economically what the house looks like. But then you have this other woman who has paid help and immaculate counters, and they're very different characters. So it is tricky to know which descriptions you need to lean into and give a little bit more around. But I think there's so much opportunity that writers don't realize exists, that even in a few words to describe a kitchen will start to layer in details about your character that make them much more real, much more, I guess, accessible to the reader's mind, so that they feel like they're experiencing a real person's life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I love that. And yeah, as soon as you said that as well, it was like you were talking about the perfect marble top. I was like, well, talk about the sunlight that's bouncing off the, because it's so,
yes,
like, it kind of opens you up to see that additional bit more. And like you say, it doesn't have, I mean, you can go way into it or you can skirt over it. So yeah, it gives you so much possibility. Also, do you only work with fiction writers, or do you work outside of fiction as well?
I used to also do memoir, but it's really tricky working with memoir, because if you're working in fiction and you comment on somebody's work, it's just their work. If you're working in memoir and you comment on their story, it's like you are critiquing their life. And it just, I don't know. I had a few clients where it felt very sticky and uncomfortable, and I felt like I was edging into a place of like psychiatry that I am not trained to go. So I very lovingly wrapped up those clients and have decided to just stick with fiction.
Like the book that I'm writing is about my life, but it incorporates the journey that got me here, which then kind of includes, all the creativity and everything like that. But one of the things that I was writing when I really wanted to be very descriptive was when I learnt to ride a bike. And there was a whole story of me riding a bike, because it came to me in a dream. It came to me in a dream. I dreamt that I could ride a bike, and I got on the bike the next day and I was riding it.
Nice.
So when I was writing that, I really wanted to, and I labored over this as well. I really wanted it to be clear that when I was pressing down on the pedal, that I was feeling like the pedal pushed back through my plimsolls, the soles of my, like feeling, all of those things. And it was just going over that and making sure that everything that, like you were talking before, everything that I was seeing and remembering about that moment wasn't just written down that, I got it the next morning, I could ride a bike, people, it to be like, it was a process of like, hang on a minute, oh my gosh, actually, hey, I'm doing this, like when from a moment of not being able to do this as well. So like over and not just writing lines, but then again of having that balance between let's not go all the way in and over too much.
Right. It's a balance. But clearly that's like an important moment in your life. I mean, learning to ride a bike, there's so much involved in it. And another thing I often tell my writers when I'm teaching writing descriptions is like, go ahead and overwrite it on your first draft, put in all the details, like all of them. But when you think about it, you could write a whole book. If you really went into every detail, you could write thousands and thousands of words of like the first time you rode a bike. That would be too much. No one really wants to read that. You could also write, I got up and rode a bike. Those would be like the extremes, right? So finding the balance in there where it's just enough description that it emphasizes what an important moment it was. And this is why I think it's important to like go ahead and let yourself totally overwrite it. every little detail you can think of, and then step away from it for a while, give yourself a break, reread it, and decide which details are important that really land it in a way that, like I was saying, like the experience in your heart and in your memory comes through, and then trim away the parts that aren't as critical to that, so that the story continues to flow and you're not spending thousands of words on like the first time you rode a bike. It's a balance. It's tricky. And that's the challenge of writing. And that's actually, I love it. That's the fun part.
Yeah. That's like, part of me was like, as soon as I'd started going in and really trying to be as detailed, I'm like, oh my God, why did I do this to myself? Because, you know, in order for me to maintain the level of description I wanted, it meant that I had to, like you were saying, like, think about everything. What did your hand feel like? And then it wasn't just about, you know, even when I was like visualizing it, it's not so much just about me pressing down on the pedal. It's like the pedal's pressing back to me. What word can I use that, like, you know, just, and I, you know, it got me back in that point of challenge where I'm like, okay, like having to think so hard, you know, the me that didn't want to use a thesaurus because that was like,
right.
But now it's like forcing my brain to actually like see it and feel it and find the words and hopefully convey, you know, enough as well. But also because many people have said different, this is like to do with memoir as well, is to make, you know, keep it simple, keep the language simple so that, you know, a 15-year-old can read it. And while I don't want to, I'm not going to take it, you know, to the nth degree. I don't want it to be so, you know, I do want to use descriptors there. I can't just have it be so simple. So like, where is the midpoint? Like when someone is thinking about their audience, is like, who do you say to them to have in mind? Like what reading level should they go for? You know, if they feel that they want to use all the words, then should they go there and just let the audience who meet the language level enjoy it, or to not necessarily dumb it down, but simplify it, but how to
make it more accessible? Yeah. I think when it comes to narrative nonfiction, which is, I mean, I'm working on my first narrative nonfiction about mindfulness and writing. So I've been thinking a lot about this. And I've definitely read books where I'm reading them and then all of a sudden there's like this big word and I'm like, that's not your voice. Like you clearly went to a thesaurus to try to sound smart and put in like a big word. And that's just as jarring as, well, anything. So I think when it comes to writing narrative nonfiction, writing it as you would tell it as best as you're able, because really that's your audience is going to respond to that. If your audience is 15-year-old girls, then write it as if you're talking to 15-year-old girls. But if your audience is a little broader than that, I would say just write it like you would speak it as best as you're able. And we can talk a little bit. I have some tricks on that too. And then in the revision process, when you go through, if there are ways to say things more succinctly that are still ways that you would say it, then being more succinct and brief is always a good move. When things can be 2 words instead of 5, make them 2. But if it's 1 word instead of 5 and the 1 word is like an absurdly, I don't know, like obscure, like no one ever actually uses that word kind of word. Right. I think that's distracting and not worth the effort to do that. I think it's going to alienate readers more than anything. And so it really comes down to voice. And the trick I wanted to share about finding your voice is journaling. And I don't know if you journal, but I have found that is the best way to learn how to write like you talk, because when you journal, you have to slow down. Even if you're typing, whether you're typing or handwriting, you have to slow your thoughts enough to let them come out through your hands, because our brains are way faster than our hands. But when we can train our brains to align with our hands, then we can type and or write in the voice that we might talk with. And the writing will sound much more authentically ours. And so I always ask my private coaching clients, I always ask them just to, if they're not already doing it, to start journaling on a regular basis, because I think that's the best way to train yourself to find your voice as an author.
Yeah, definitely. And I've got into this thing of like, I just write in capitals now. A lot of the time, like the journaling will be a brain dump.
Yeah.
I wake up with stuff and I just have to get it out. It's better to get it on the page than go and tell the person that I think needs to hear what's going through my mind at that particular point in time, or whatever it is, or sometimes it's nothing. And then every now and again there'll be like something that comes out. I'm like, oh, that's good, I'll get back to that. And then when I go and look back, I'm like, what was that?
Yeah.
Completely illegible writing. But
well,
yeah,
and I don't think it matters in terms of usability, because I journal every morning and none of it is anything I'd ever put in a story or like, sometimes I'll have an idea of like, oh, I should write a story about this, and I'll put a star on it, and okay, sure, maybe someday I'll come back and look at whether it's actually a decent idea. But the intention is never to like create usable prose in my journal. It really is just practicing aligning my hand with my brain so that my voice comes through authentically when I turn towards my fiction. And I like a good brain dump. It just helps me sort out my brain in the morning. It's just my habit.
Yeah. I found some of my older ones the other day as well, some of my early song lyric books as well. Like one was from 1988, when I used to write in lowercase back in the day. So that was interesting just to see where I was then, and what I was going through. So I'm glad I kept them. I really am as well. They're good to look back on and kind of see where your mind goes and your mind has been over the years. So yeah, I recommend journaling. It's been journaling, songwriting. There's always a few books. I'm laughing because there's about 5 here in like different things, Yeah.
I keep all my journals, but I've never once looked back at them. And so recently I've started thinking like, do I need to keep them? I actually burned a few of them. I burned my high school journals just to like see how it felt.
Wow.
And it was really liberating, actually. I might burn more of them. There are some I would think I will keep. I think I will keep like the years that my kids were born. I'll definitely keep the COVID years because I think those are going to be a fun little time capsule. But I think the rest of them I might just go through and burn them from time to time just for the fun of it. I don't know.
How does it feel? I mean, like I haven't they've just all been stacked up, and also because the process, every time I bought one, it had to be, I was like a real stickler about what a journal should be. It was like, I can't just go and have a regular book. It's like the lines, and do I want to go through a phase where I want like a spiral bound? And there was so many different. Oh, it's not just me then. Good.
No, not at all. Not at all. And
to kind of see it, go to ash.
It was uncomfortable at first. And I'd been talking about doing it for a while. And then my mom recently lost a friend, and we decided to go to the beach and do a little bonfire and like a little goodbye ceremony. And I decided this was the time I was gonna do it. And so initially I was like, I'm going to burn them all. And then I was like, no, I can't do it. And I was like, okay, I'll just burn the high school journals because they're mostly silly things anyway. And it was uncomfortable. Like before we drove out to the beach, I was flipping through them and just peeking at them. And this is where it got really sticky for me, is that like, I didn't want to read it, but I also didn't want to let it go. I was like, it felt like it symbolized a different version of myself that, a version of myself I didn't like very much. I was not a very happy person in high school. And I think that was why once I finally, I tossed them on the fire, tried not to think about it too much, watched them burn, took some pictures because it looks kind of cool when they burn, all the pages shriveling up like that. And then as we drove away, I felt really liberated by this idea of like, I no longer had to think about whether I was ever going to read them. Because I couldn't. They were gone. And there is a little bit of mourning in that of like, okay, I have to let go of ever revisiting an external example of or representation of who I was.
Wow.
Which is, it is liberating, but it also feels a little bit like a little piece of me was lost. It's interesting.
Yeah. Gosh. Maybe I should try. I don't know. I don't know. Like, even recently, like a couple of years ago, I went through like big purge on the clothes as well, because I'm like, I'm in my 50s now. I'm not going to wear sequined harem pants ever. So,
Yeah.
you know, like there were certain things that were like cute and cool, especially when I was performing, that were like, I'm like, whenever am I going to go to an occasion? And if for any reason that I do need it, then, you know, a 50-year-old woman, 50-year-old plus woman deserves then to have a better version of sequin pants as opposed to the ones that I got from Topshop, you know? So,
Exactly.
so it was like, you know, and it is good to kind of see things go. I think out of all of those things, there was one top that I'm like, I didn't really, you know, that I was like, didn't, you know, and every now and again I do a purge and I'll always go one thing over. I think I got into the flow of like, you know, getting the notification of someone buying something that I'd not seen for months or been like locked away. And of course, like, you know, there was like that year and a half of COVID where like nothing.
Right.
And then I started to look back on these things and go, actually, well, I'm never going to be that skinny again. So one, we over that expectation, you know, right. And somebody else have the fun that I did from it. So then it got into this thing where it's like, oh my God, people are buying that, really? So I got rid of so many things, and then it was then I started to get a little bit too far into the momentum of it, and then
you had no clothes left.
And then there was one top that I'm like, do I really want to get rid of? I'm like, where am I going to wear this? And then it went, and then Christmas came around, because it's one of those things that only really kind of works on the kind of festive occasion, and I'm like, I look really good right now. And I saw kind of versions of it in the high street stores. I'm like, but no, that was like a nice vintage find that I'd found. So sometimes I've done it a few times where I've gone way too far in a clear out and I've kind of gone out. But these are clothes, you know, they were never I created. So
that's the fear with burning the journals, is that you'd be like, oh, I went too far.
And it's not even anything that I've looked at. I'm like, years ago as well, I had like a stack of rejection letters from publishing companies.
Back when they used to actually come in paper.
So I got rid of those. I didn't regret getting rid of those, you know, and I hung on to them for a long time because I thought, well, it's proof that I tried, you know, it's proof that I was putting my stuff out there.
If you're not getting rejected, you're not trying. It's it's part of the game.
But then I let those go. But I don't know. That's an interesting one. I'll see. And there's like a second batch of storage that I've got somewhere else that also has all the journals when I did the Artist's Way, like over 10 years ago, that I'd really like to see what I was writing then when I wrote that book. So we'll see. I'm
fascinating.
Those, you know, going back and seeing where you were and what you were doing and where your mind was and how you got here. So an interesting thing. I wanted to ask you, when do you know that you're done? How do you go and let go of it and then let go in order to go, okay, it's not going to get any better. I'm going to have rights in my mind, but it's out there, and I have to let the version that exists in the world be the version that it is.
Yeah, there's a stage that my husband's a filmmaker and a screenwriter, and there's a stage that we joke is called the rearranging chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Like there's a point where you're just like moving commas, right? And you're not changing the meaning. It's time to be done. It's time to let it go. And usually it's pretty easy to tell once you're there, but there are a lot of this really comes back again to that idea of right view, of, is the story capturing what you wanted it to capture? Is what's in your heart and in your imagination on the page? And it can be really hard to be honest with yourself about that. On the second novel, the one I was talking about before, it's kind of this epic story. It has a little bit of magic. It covers 250 years, and I thought it was done. This was years ago. I guess like middle of COVID at some point. Anyway, and I thought it was done. And I was like, I'm just going to read it through one more time before I send it to my editor. And I read it through, and there was this little spot right in the middle of the story. It's 7 sections. And in section 4, I made a circle on the page, and I'm like, this something like, I don't know what, but this is like, my brain is catching on this. And I finished reading and I went back and I tried to figure out like what wasn't sitting right. And as I started to pull on, it was like pulling on a string in a sweater. Like, well, if that doesn't work, this doesn't work. If that doesn't work, this doesn't work. And like both the ending and the beginning just kind of unraveled from that point. And it was so upsetting because I was like, I really thought it was done. But then once I realized it wasn't, I couldn't just ignore that it wasn't quite right. And it took me 6 months to like figure out what was wrong with it, rewrite the beginning or rewrite the middle, and then go back and fix all the ripples of that through the beginning and the ending. It was so much work for someone who thought she was done, but it's so much better now. Like that middle point has transformed it, and it's no longer just like it kind of works. Now it's like this beautiful turning point in the story. And that's what I always wanted it to be. And so again, being able to recognize that little voice that says, it's not quite what I like, it's close. And I think that's the difference between good and great. And like you can put however many thousands of words on a page, they're good enough. It has a beginning, middle, and end, sure. But when you can really listen to that little voice of like, is it exactly what you wanted to say, and not stop until it is, then you've got something. Whether or not it's, I mean, great is so subjective, right? Everyone's going to have opinions on your work, but what you were saying about letting it go, putting it out into the world, you can do that knowing that it is the story you wanted to tell. And it's the best version of the story that you wanted to tell. And no matter what anyone says about it, it won't matter because it's perfect. It's a perfect representation of what you wanted to say.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I love how you just said, like, you know, you pull from here and then down.
Oh, it's so painful.
I could imagine how it is. But that also, that knowing of that feeling of, okay, it is, you know, and the way that I get that feeling when I've put something down, even now or before or whenever, was something would just kind of click. It was almost like the Rubik's Cube. You turn it when more the sides are done. And you're like, okay, it can't go any further than this.
Yeah. This is what I wanted it to look like. Yeah. Or sound like, or read like, or whatever. Yeah.
And there's that knowing. And that's when I'm coming back to the people who are just plugging it in and printing it off and putting their name on the front, is you will miss that knowing of what it's like. That discomfort of feeling unfinished, and then that knowing and that kind of release, that tension release of going, I can't think of anything else I can add right now, so that you can feel that satisfaction. Like you say, you put it out there and like, that was as good as I could have done at that period in time. And in being able to see that with yourself, then like you say, nothing that anyone can say can bother you, really. You know, like, trust me, I've had like years of criticism.
The bad reviews come, but it doesn't matter.
But you know, if you're going to review, like if you review on something that I think is a valid point, you know, if you catch the bit that I was like fudging over and hoping that people did, then fair enough. But if it's something that I know that was of worth, and also it depends where it's coming from as well, I suppose, with criticism.
Right.
When you put stuff out there, it's also be cautious of whose voice you're allowing to have an opinion on yours. Everyone's going to have an opinion. Absolutely. Well,
and for me, that fudging thing is where it's at. Like, I see this a lot in writers who are just getting started, is that they're like, no one will really notice. People will notice. And even when you think it's perfect, they will notice things that you never even considered. And so listening to that little voice of like, I'm just going to fudge it, no one will notice. That's like that little voice is your best friend when you're editing, when you're trying to figure out like how to make something better. Anywhere where you're kind of just maybe no one will notice, dig in there. That's where the juiciest opportunities are for making the work more representative of what you really want to say. And then with the critics, I don't know. Everyone always has an opinion. You can't get too caught up in it. Yeah.
What a job to have, you know, what a shame. For that to be what you do. Like, you're really like, this is my opinion, like, okay.
Right.
Unfortunately, you know, not unfortunately they have a job, but they have such a huge influence over the minds of people before they even come towards something, based on, you know, the opinions that are coming from somebody who we've decided that their opinion stands above everyone else's opinion. So therefore, you know, and so on and so forth. It's criticism is interesting, like a whole other episode.
It's a whole, well, and I have a lot of friends because writing like book reviews is actually one of the veins of freelance writing that pays pretty well. Right. And I never could do it. Like, even when I was doing freelance work, I'm like, writing a novel is so hard. I cannot possibly read someone's work and pick it apart. It just like, no, I won't do it. I never did. I couldn't go there.
Mm-hmm. But I suppose the check makes it all that much easier, doesn't it?
Well, you got to pay your bills. So like, I have friends who like, that was how they made their living, and like, more power to them. I couldn't get into it. It was too hard.
It's been great speaking to you. Have you got any
likewise
like sharings that you've got when it comes to writing and when it comes to mindfulness that you can share, that you can think of?
Yeah, actually I have a few. So aprildavila.com is my home base. Pretty much everything I have is there. This book I'm working on is almost done, and I'm going to self-publish this one on Kindle Direct Publishing. So I should be able to have it up and available on my website really soon. I'm really excited to share it with everyone. But I also have other resources. Like I have a really great little mini masterclass called Banish Writer's Block Forever, which talks about how mindfulness practice can help you kind of get out of your own way and actually put your butt in the chair and put words on the page. And there's a little link on the banner of my website. So there's a free resource there. I'm always teaching classes and workshops, and trying to think what else we could send. I mean, I have a lot of free resources on my website. So I guess that's where I would send people to check in with me if they're interested in learning more about mindfulness and writing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been lovely.
Conversation about things that I just love to do, and like writing and creativity with someone who's doing that. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, April, for sharing with me, and thank you for listening. Once again, please check the show notes below for links to the Creative Confidence Masterclass. If you can't join me this time, or if you're listening too late, don't worry, join the list anyway, because this is going to be a monthly occurrence. You can find out more about me on my website. That's carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. Also find me on LinkedIn and Facebook, Carol May Whittick, and Kazmick, Cazmick, on Instagram. So until the next episode, thank you for listening. Take care. Catch you soon. Bye-bye.